You're listening to This Week in No Code plus AI, with weekly episodes sharing the latest advancements of AI, plus exclusive interviews, founders using these tools. So without any further ado, let's get started. Welcome to This Week in No Code plus AI. I'm your host, JJ Englert, and we have another fantastic show for you this week. We are bringing on the CEO of Zapier, Wade, where you'll hear more about his story behind co-founding Zapier, building it as a bootstrap business into one of the largest automations and now AI companies into the world. But before we dive into the interview, which I'm so excited about, we've got some spicy news of the week. So let's get started. OpenAI made waves again with a recent announcement on their roadmap from CEO Sam Altman, who announced that the much anticipated reasoning model O3 will not be released as a standalone model as many of us expected. Instead, GPT-4.5, which is codenamed Orion, for many of you that remember that leak a while ago, it will be launched in just a few weeks. And GPT-5, which will integrate a lot of OpenAI's technologies, including O3, will roll out in the coming months. Now, GPT-5 will introduce features like voice mode, canvas, deep research, aiming to create a unified system for a wider range of tasks. Plus, there'll be different levels of intelligence available. Standard for everyone, higher for Plus subscribers, and the best for the pro users. Looks like OpenAI is simplifying its offerings after realizing things got a bit too complicated with the dozens of different models you could choose from, which one to choose, which one to do. So this could also be in a response to competitors like DeepSeek, who have recently come out with a seemingly free reasoning model that's still shaking up the world. So good competition happening here, forcing OpenAI's hand a little bit. Speaking of forcing your hand, Elon Musk made an offer to buy OpenAI for $97.4 billion over this week, which was swiftly rejected. Now, Musk said he will withdraw the offer if OpenAI agrees to drop its plans to become a for-profit company and stick to its original mission of developing AI for the benefit of mankind. If not, Musk says the charity will be compensated by what's an arm's length buyer is willing to pay, which was that $97 billion. You see what he did there? Big moves. Now, let's talk about a sponsor, making it easy to build amazing apps faster with Bubble. No codable components. If you're building on Bubble.io and want to save hours on design, check out No Codable Components. With over 350 premium responsive UI components, you can instantly deploy professional-grade designs for everything from landing pages to dashboards, Kanban boards, real-time chat interfaces. Trusted by 2,500 plus Bubble developers, no-code components makes it app building as easy as copy and paste. Simply install the Chrome extension, browse the library, add the components with a couple of clicks, ready to streamline your workflow. Get started today at nocodable-components.com. Plans start at just $20 a month. Now, a couple more announcements real quick. Bolt has just came out with the ability to not only build web applications with their AI builder, but now mobile applications as well. Also, Repl.it is still on the scene with their mobile app builder, encouraging as many people as possible to build with their mobile app, allowing them to build mobile apps on their phone. And finally, Lovable just released a visual interface to adjust the code that AI creates for them. This is a really big thing in my opinion, because a lot of these AI builders struggle with getting the prompt so far, and then it's like you need to change a small detail, and the prompt struggles at just changing that specific detail. Now with Lovable, you can click on the screen, it will open a visual composer, and then you can edit that detail. It's a really good step for Lovable and AI builders. I'm still seeing a lot of folks getting stuck at that 80 to 90% mark. A lot of them are finding success by bringing that code into Cursor, fixing it, bringing it back into Lovable. But there's a lot that is going into this to get these apps production ready, and it's still not quite hitting the mark. However, this visual component aspect by Lovable really is a great step in the right direction towards closing this gap. And so it's something we'll continue to follow along with. And finally, my AI agents course is just like 15 days out from being launched, and I'm ahead of schedule, so I might even launch some of it early. So if you're interested, go to nocodealliance.org, check out my new AI agents course. Whether you're a pro or you're a beginner, I will show you all the basics and necessities and essentials for building AI agents, including the behind the scenes at how to use RAG, vector databases, how to set them up, how to store data in databases itself, and then all the way into building 10 different agents with 5 different platforms, showing you how to build agents at the personal level and the professional level, whether it's a scheduling assistant, a personal assistant, a podcast producer, a social listening tool, so many different things I'm going to teach you how to build in a autonomous way. So then you can then deploy these things into the real world to help you save time and money. My AI agent course, really happy with how it's coming together. Go to nocodealliance.org to check it out and get enrolled. It's launching in a couple of weeks. I can't wait. Now, I'm so excited for this interview. A little bit of backstory. Claudia, who is the community manager of NoCode Operators, who got acquired by Zapier, good friend of me and the show. I was like, hey, Claudia, is there any way we can get Wade on the show? And she's like, you know what, JJ, hold on. A minute later, she comes back. She's like, yeah, Wade agreed. And this really, it says a lot about Wade, and just anyone on the team could reach out and just get him on a podcast like that. Granted, we have good connections and whatnot, but we've heard so many great things about Wade and his journey. And now I'm really excited to share more of it with you, from personal journey to building the Zapier journey to building a large bootstrap company and everything that comes with that, and so much more. So grab a cup of coffee, get into a comfortable chair, or whether you're listening to this doing yard work or shoveling snow, whatever it may be, get ready for a fantastic interview. And with that, let's get on with the show. All right, here I am with Wade, the CEO and co-founder of Zapier. Wade, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, JJ.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you on. You co-founded Zapier back in 2011 with a couple other co-founders in Missouri. Can you tell us a little bit about that time and where you were, or as a email marketing manager, I believe?
Yeah, so I was working at a mortgage company, Veterans United, that was really good at online marketing. And I was there. Both my co-founders were there. Brian was a full-time employee working in the same office I was. Mike was a part-time, was a student at school mostly. And Brian and I in particular, we spent a lot of time together. We were obviously working at the same office, but then after work, we were playing a bunch of music together. We were in a blues and jazz band,
Oh, cool.
and we were both into entrepreneurship. We were pitching ideas back and forth pretty constantly. And one day while we're at work, Brian messages me on iChat at the time and says, "Hey, I think I got this idea. I'm noticing that folks that are using these tools like Mailchimp, Zendesk, QuickBooks, Salesforce, etc. You go to all these forums and people want integrations. And the vendors never have good answers for this. There's usually +1, me too. When are you going to build this, etc." And eventually the product manager will come in and, "Thanks for the feedback, everybody. We'll take a look, see if we can get it done," which if you've ever worked in one of these companies, was code for probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so Brian messaged me, he's like, "I think we can make a really simple tool that you can mix and match, integrate these apps where you can have a trigger on one side, an action on the other, where anytime something happens over here, do the other thing over there." That's it. That was the sort of core idea. And I'm working over here in email marketing. I'm working on a Marketo deployment. I'm a bad engineer. And Marketo has this like old school SOAP WSDL API that's like documentation is in a PDF. And I'm not having any fun because I'm no good. And this is not like a really great API to be working with. And when he pitches me this, I'm like, that's it. That if that existed, I would just be using that. That would be such a better way to go get this thing set up. And so I was pretty much sold from the get-go that we should go try and build something in and around this space.
And was Brian technical? Is he
Yeah,
technical?
Brian is our co-founder, our CTO. Mhm.
Okay, so he had the engineering chops. You had the conviction, and then Mike was.
Mike is very technical as well, great product thinker, and as well.
Okay, so you guys are working a full-time job. You have this idea. What are those next steps towards building Zapier?
So we went to this hackathon in Columbia that was coming up like a few weeks later, built out the first prototype of it, and had a lot of fun and had a lot of success. But at the time, we're not thinking, oh, this is going to be a company. This is going to be it. But because of how well that weekend went, we got together. Brian and I on Monday had lunch together. Okay, so do we want to do this? And we're both feeling each other out. And we're like, this is fun. Let's go figure this thing out. Now, is it a project? Is it a company? We're not really sure, but we want to go build this thing. Mike's at school, so he's at classes. So we're texting him being like, hey, you want to catch up tonight for drinks? We catch up with him, do the same song and dance. Hey, you feeling this? Do you want it? Do you want it? And he's like, yeah, man, let's go figure out how to make this thing happen. And we're in central Missouri. It's not like you can raise millions of bucks and then quit your day job and go do this.
Yeah.
So we're just like, all right, nights and weekends, this thing. And
Okay.
so for the next 6 months, we're cranking away on Zapier nights and weekends, trying to get the first beta out, the first prototypes, the first customers, all that stuff.
So your nights and weekends at the three of you, you finally get your MVP to market. What does that look like, bringing an MVP to market, 3 bootstrapped, unknown guys doing this? What are those next steps?
We had, I would say there was probably 2 phases to getting to launch. So the first one was just getting those first users and customers. And we always knew we wanted these folks to pay because we were like, we want to get good signals that this stuff matters. We don't want a bunch of tire kickers that are like, oh, cool, love what you're doing, but not actually serious. You can get fooled really easily as a founder by that. And I remember emailing some folks that were like commenting on these forums and saying, hey, we're working on this. Do you want to check this out? And one of them, emailed me back and said, hey, I already found a solution for the thing I was looking for, which he was looking for a PayPal high-rise setup. But he's, are you working on this thing? And I was like, yeah, we are. But it's not just PayPal high-rise. We're also looking for, and I quick checked out his site and looked to see what other tools he was using. And I noticed he had Wufoo and Aweber. And so I was like, but it also integrates with Wufoo, Aweber. And so he emails back and says, oh, I'd love to. I've been wanting to get a Wufoo Aweber integration set up. How do I go do this? We sent him I go talk to Brian and Mike. I'm like, get Wufoo Aweber on Zapier so we can get this thing going for him. So we do that. We shoot him an invite link. He goes to try and sign up and get the thing working. He's having a bad time. So he emails me back, says, wait, can you maybe jump on Skype and walk me through this thing?
Right.
So I'm walking through him and he's having a bad time. It's not going good at all. But we get to the finish line. His app's set up and I say, okay, let's try it out. Go fill out the form in Wufoo. Let's see if that email contact information goes to Aweber. So he fills out the form, goes to Aweber, refreshes the page, sees the email in. And he goes, holy cow, Wade, this is incredible. This is going to change how I do this stuff. How much do I owe you? And so that's when I knew. I was like, oh, great. This is going to work. It's because in spite of the product experience being like not good at all, he really wanted it. So that first phase was doing a lot of those bespoke onboardings where I would do the same thing, where I would just watch folks try and set it up, take copious notes on like how they were struggling, what wasn't working, and then go back to Brian and Mike and be like, okay, we got to make this and this better. Part two was then us trying to figure out how to take that stuff and get closer and closer to a self-serve model. And then somewhere along the way, we felt like enough people are being successful without having to be handheld that we're going to go ahead and launch this thing and see if we can welcome everybody in. And so that was the approach to getting from a beta to like an actual public product.
These users that you were talking to, were they technical users? Were they non-technical?
Mostly non-technical. There were folks they're still sophisticated folks. These are power users of tools like MailChimp and Basecamp and QuickBooks and Salesforce and Zendesk and all that stuff. They're not necessarily the average person you find on the street who's I barely used a computer or used Facebook or whatever. Like that's what most folks were back in 2011. But they're not engineers. They're not like diving down into code and shipping this stuff left and right. We felt like as long as we hit a similar quality bar as tools like MailChimp, like Zendesk, etc., we'd probably be in a good spot.
Yeah. How many integrations did you have once you decided to open it up to everyone? Do you remember?
We had, I think when we launched, we probably had 50 integrations on the platform at the time.
Was Brian and Mike the ones back there doing it? Were you in there too? Who was building all these integrations?
Yeah, all three of us were building integrations. I think Brian and Mike did the lion's share. Those first 50, they probably did 80% of them together. And I chipped in maybe 10 myself. Yeah. I don't know.
I assume you guys got really good with API documentations during that time.
Oh, totally. Yeah. We had a sort of template for like how to go add these things to it. So it took what was a tedious job into something that was much more routine.
Yeah. And then which ones you went after? Were you just looking at popularity and like common denominators there? Or how did you pick which ones?
We wanted to, you're spot on. Like we needed a way to measure popularity. Some of that was just our own gut instinct. Hey, these tools seem popular. We use them. Like we probably should have them. Some of that was going and looking at search data where it was like, oh, these things are getting this site's getting more traffic than that site. It's probably more popular. And then as we had more people come into the site, if people were asking us for stuff more frequently than other things, the things at the top of the list would go. And so it's like using all those inputs to fuel the priority list.
Now, you guys have only raised money once, and it was in 2012, a very little amount. At that point, so as the three of you why did you choose to raise that? Was it just, hey, this is working, but we just need a little something, get up and going? Well, walk me through that.
So we'd gone full time on Zapier. We're fresh out of college. We have no money. It's not like any of us are independently wealthy or anything like that. Yeah. And we moved to California, in which California is expensive. And while Zapier is starting to show signs of success, it's not like it can fund rent at that point in time. So it was a pretty simple calculus. It was like, we need enough money to fund rent and then have a little bit of a cushion for ourselves in case it takes a little longer than we thought. And so that was why we took the seed round in 2012.
Yeah. And that was the last round you've taken. You've been bootstrapped ever since, which is incredible. We'll get to that in a little bit. So you now have a little bit of money in the bank, $1 million in the bank, as a couple of people from Missouri building this tech company of $1 million in the bank. The feeling that you must have had is just, wow, this is really exciting. You moved to California, so you're pretty much rock stars at this point. What are you telling your parents? Do they understand what you're doing at all?
No, they definitely don't understand what we're working on. My mom's comment is, I'm sure people can relate to this. She's, what are you going to do for healthcare? Listen, very typical parents that are just like very concerned about,
Yeah.
hey, are you throwing your life away? My dad was an entrepreneur though. And so I think he understood it. Even if he didn't understand the product and the tech that we were doing, he understood trying to go make a thing of your own.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. Who was like 2012? In California did you move? You go to San Francisco?
Yeah, we're in the Bay Area.
Okay, so you moved to San Francisco, very expensive. Tell me about making that first stride to like growing that team to 10 or 20. Was that a quick thing? Did it happen over a couple of years? What was that like for you?
So we had a don't hire till it hurts
Mm,
philosophy inside of Zapier. So we really took our time with the early hires. The first year, we didn't hire anyone. It was just Brian, Mike, and I working on this thing. And then when we went to go hire someone, it was because we were waking up and we would be doing customer support until 2, 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And at a certain point, we were like, we love customer support. It's a great feedback mechanism, but we don't have enough time to go actually fix the things that they're complaining about. So let's hire someone for customer support. So we bring that in, we get some leverage there. And
what
so
was
we're
that person's
starting.
name? Do you remember?
Yeah, Micah, he's still with us. He was
Wow.
a former roommate of
Legend.
mine.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Legend.
And the second person was like, okay, so now we have the support side's under control, but now there's still just a lot more requests coming in that we have time to go build. Okay. 3 months later, we're like, let's get another engineer in here who can help us start scaling some of this stuff. And so that mentality of just really hyper focusing on where are the bottlenecks in the business, what's slowing us down. And then when we start to feel like that's more pain than it's worth, that's when we started to hire folks. And so we didn't have 10 people in the company until 2014. So it took 2 years and 3 months to go from the three of us to 10 people.
Hmm.
So we were just very meticulous in terms of growing the team.
Yeah. Having co-founders is a blessing and sometimes, and also it's hard other times. There's two of you, three together, but two others. How do you guys manage conflicts whenever that may come up or disagreements on a certain direction, how much you should invest in certain things? Like,
Yeah.
you guys go about managing that?
I think we were pretty lucky. The three of us, because we'd worked at Veterans United, I think partly growing up in Missouri, we had, similar values, similar mental models for like how to grow companies, what we thought was important, what we thought wasn't important. And so as a result, like we were aligned on most of the big things, how to think about fundraising, how to think about scaling teams, what are our long-term goals out of this stuff. Those things, we didn't have much debates on that.
Mm.
And then when it came to the more just like tactical day-to-day decision making, I think the thing that helped was all three of us, while we had um some similar, like we had enough overlap in our skills that we understood and valued what each other was doing, but we also had complementary skills where there was clear areas of expertise. Brian was hard charging on the back end, Mike was working on the front end and the design, I was working on marketing and support. And so created just really clear roles and responsibilities for us. And then folks would have opinions on those other things. Brian and I had opinions on the product, and we'd be talking to Mike about all that stuff. They had opinions on marketing. Maybe rarely did I dive into the back end code, but I could chip in here or there. But it helped because it meant that you had a thought partner for the stuff you were working on. So it made it just a little less lonely, but it made the decision parts easy, where it was like, if it's this area, Wade's going to make the call. If it's that area, Brian's going to make the call. If it's that area, Mike's going to make the call.
Yeah. Starting a startup, there's a lot of up and downs. Was there any point where you're just like, shoot, I don't know if we're gonna make it? Like, this is this was just a big blow to us. At any points do you remember that happening?
I felt mostly through Zapier's history, we've had the good kind of problems. I worked at a small startup before Zapier that just didn't have product market fit. No matter what we tried, we just couldn't get anything going. And so I'd felt that feeling before of just like spinning your wheels and just
Mhm.
feeling, gosh, this isn't, I'm not sure how we're going to get this thing to work. And at Zapier, never really had that feeling. It always felt like, okay, maybe I wish we were going faster, or maybe I wish we solved this problem better, but it always felt like there was momentum and that we were moving in the right direction. I think if anything, looking back, I probably should have distilled a stronger sense of paranoia in the team, which is that, hey, this has to be earned every single day. It
Mhm.
is not a given that the things we are going to do are going to work out. And so I think I could have just done a much better job of being like, hey, in some respects, we're being successful in spite of ourselves, not because of ourselves. And we're going to have to keep getting better.
Now, Zapier's been around for a long time now. I think you were very early in many ways. Did you ever get to a point where it's just like you were too early, or was it just there was enough people willing to keep getting on that roller coaster with you, and then it just kept taking off as more people became aware of these? Or talk to us about just being early in this space.
Don't know that we were early. I think we pretty much nailed it in terms of timing wise. There were some companies that were before us that were working in this space that actually did have a little bit of a head start.
Mhm.
I don't think they I don't think they quite figured out how to make the product experience good enough or how to get the distribution angle. And I think those are the two things we did better. And I think the timing was right because that 2011 was when APIs were really starting to
Mm.
become a thing. You saw all the like Gen 1 SaaS players like Zendesk and QuickBooks and MailChimp and all those folks were launching APIs. You saw the first wave of API companies coming on board. So like Stripe and SendGrid and
Mhm.
Twilio, things like that. Those all launched like 2010, 2011, something like that. And so it was right at the beginning of that upswing. And it needed a company to just plop in and be like, oh, we're going to help knit all this stuff together. And so I think we got the timing pretty darn, and it created just like a lot of white
Momentum.
space for us
Yeah.
to go after versus 5 years later. I guess it was probably 6 years later, like this idea of no code really heated up. But by that point in time, we were just like, we were really cruising. And so we
Mhm.
got to surf that wave, I think, much more aggressively than some of the like upstarts at the time did.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that for sure. You have grown the company to what, like over 800 employees today, something like that?
Yeah, we're about 700 and change.
Which is incredible. Fully remote. Talk to us about building that team culture, what it's like to have a fully remote workforce at that scale, but still have a culture in place.
I think the thing that we tried to do was that don't hire till it hurts mentality. Meant that we were just able to take our time and learn from every person joining the team. And then when folks would join, we were able to pay attention to what's making those folks successful when they are successful. Not everyone was successful, but for the ones that were really successful, we would pay attention not just to their hard skills. Are they great at support? Are they great at engineering? Are they great at marketing? But what is it about the way in which they show up to work that is enabling them to be so successful at Zapier? And then we reversed engineered those things and created hiring rubrics and performance reviews and all that sort of stuff around those dimensions. And that created just a reinforcement loop inside the company to say, hey, this is what great looks like. And we just managed to that at the end of the day. And so you get high caliber folks, they're like minded in the way they want to go work. And I think that went a long ways. The second thing we did was something we borrowed from the HubSpot crew, where they talk a lot about you're as a company, you have two things you sell. You sell the products that you make, but you also sell the culture that you have. And the thing we would do is just pay a lot of attention to the employee engagement surveys, to feedback we were getting from folks. And when we would hear things that people are like, this is why I love working at Zapier, we'd be like, okay, great. Never lose that. Let's find ways to reinforce that stuff. And then when we get feedback that was like, hey, this kind of sucks. Like, we hate this. This is no fun. We'd figure out, okay, how do we shore that up? Or sometimes it'd be like, actually, we think that's a feature, not a bug. And so we're just going to do a better job of setting expectations coming in. We're not this kind of place. So if you want X, we'll know that we're not X. We're more Y. And just heads up, don't join if you really care about X.
Yeah. Piggybacking on that, you and your co-founders have had many different roles in the sense that you were a small company. Now you're a very big company. And the role of a CEO in a small company compared to a big company is different. What is that journey like for you, Ben, personally? And from managing a small company to a big company, how has that been for you and that journey?
I can't think of a single thing that I could have done the last decade where I would have learned more than doing this job. It really does change. Every year it changes. There's a there's an intense pressure to get better. You have to constantly be learning. You have to constantly be challenging yourself. I don't know that there's a single day that I've shown up and been like, you know what? I'm great at my job. I don't know that I ever felt that. But I can tell I'm getting better because I look at challenges that I had a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago and go, holy cow, I could cakewalk through that problem now. That's so much easier than it would have been for me that period of time ago. Yeah. So it's definitely a challenging thing to
It
do.
if you're open to talking about it, were there any resources that you looked to or got help from along the way that helped you mature as a CEO and to learn each year and to be better?
Yeah. There's a I think there's a couple resources I leaned on when I was learning to be a manager. There's a lot of great manager resources. There's things like great books like High Output Management. There's a great podcast, Manager Tools. So there's a lot of tools like that help you when you're trying to learn a function. Again, there's like books and resources and things that you could learn. Certainly when we're smaller, those resources were much, much more plentiful. Um, as Zapier got larger and larger, had to lean a lot more on peer groups and just made friends with founders and CEOs who were maybe a year ahead or 2 years ahead and just would send them emails periodically and ask for advice on specific topics. How'd you do this? How'd you think about that? What do you think about this? Etc. The third thing is I also got a coach at a certain point where I was like, I just need much more consistent, dedicated help to talk through the problems that we're facing to help us scale. Um,
That's great.
and the last thing is one atypical thing we had was the board was just the three of us, and we love that for our independence.
Mm,
And so that was really powerful. And when it came to thinking about what do we want to do with our board, it allowed us to be a little more creative with it. And as we got much larger, we looked for people who we were like, holy cow, this is a world-class human being. We invite that person in to be an independent director. And so that's how we got Jay Simons, who was the longtime president at Atlassian, to join our boards. We just want him to like spend a lot of time thinking about our business and bouncing ideas off of us, etc., to just get more of that outside support. So those are some of the things that work for me. Today, you've got great, like the AI tools are great, like partners for a lot of this stuff as well, too. So that's also a thing that's been added to my repertoire uh, to just help just get better.
yeah, ditto. Along the way, you must have gotten offers from a lot of investors to invest in Zapier, and obviously you've turned it down. Tell me about that decision to turn it down to stay bootstrapped, whereas you control more of the company, but maybe you grow slower. What has been your thought process, you and your co-founders along the way to stay bootstrapped?
I think there was two things at play here. I think one was a more like just like pure rational economical decision. And then the second one was more of a philosophical decision. On the economic side, it was literally just looking at here's how the business is growing, here's the constraints in the business. And based on that, the revenue coming in is going to be able to help us fund the next set of growth. We don't need to go raise more money to help us hit XYZ milestone. That would just be giving up dilution for nothing in return. In fact, it would just invite another cook in the kitchen, which candidly, we didn't want another cook in the kitchen. We felt like we had plenty of cooks in the kitchen already. So that was maybe the like economic rational sort of point of view. On the more philosophical one was, we just liked the independence. We liked being able to call our own shots. We'd worked at Veterans United, which was owned 50-50 by two brothers. And so we saw the way they worked and ran their company, and we liked a lot about it. And we were probably just more inclined to bootstrapping than we probably were to this like venture path at the end of the day.
Yeah. Recently, Zapier has expanded beyond automations into tables, databases, and interfaces, and now agents. Talk to us about your product expansion and when you realized it was time to go to a full stack builder.
Yeah, I think the thing we recognized was there was probably two things. One, we just noticed like certain reliability issues that our customers were facing. Yeah, I remember we were using like Google Sheets, which is a phenomenal product. I love Google Sheets, but our customers that were using like Google Sheets at a serious scale would run into API issues all the time. And it
Oh,
was just super frustrating for them. And often they'd blame us. They'd say, Zapier, this is broken. It's not working, etc. But there wasn't much we could do about it. Like the product just wasn't meant to be used in that way and meant for that type of scale. And so at a certain point, we were like, if we want to make sure that these customers stick with us and have a great experience, we need to find a way to go solve this problem. So Zapier Tables emerged from that. It was to say, hey, we want to build an automation first, table environment that can help these folks really scale their usage of automation with Zapier. And so that was the first foray. And then we rinse, wash, and repeated that, where we've just looked at like where are the biggest frustrations our customers are facing as they grow and figuring out how can we tackle different product adjacencies that help them solve that, with the end goal being how do we create an audit, like an all-in-one, or at least all-in-one platform, not necessarily saying you're only going to use Zapier, but like within the Zapier ecosystem, including all of our integrations and our partners, you can go tackle any of your automation needs, and you're going to feel confident that you can scale those with like great reliability, great observability, all that sort of stuff. And so that has really fueled the product direction that we've been taking over the last few years.
hmm And you recently launched agents, AI agents. Now, you guys have been doing a lot of AI automations for many years, but AI agents is a little bit of a twist on that. And you recently rebranded towards that. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were seeing there and then why you eventually rebranded and a little bit more about the agents experience?
Yeah. So agents are a way to set up automations that have much more inference associated with it. You give the agent autonomy to go complete a task, do a workflow, etc. So they share some characteristics with classic zaps, but a zap will actually do exactly what you say. Whereas with an agent, you might let it do some stuff. So for example, to paint a very clear picture, maybe you want to send follow-up emails to leads that you're getting from a website. And the old school Zapier world, you would have a lead that comes in, maybe you log it in a spreadsheet, and then maybe you create a draft inside of Gmail. That draft inside of Gmail with a classic Zap, you would say, hi, blank. And then you'd have these like almost mail merge style templates that you would use.
hmm
Whereas with an agent, what you can do is say, hey, here's the name, email, web address of this person. What I want you to go do is look at their website, see what you learn. I want you to go check out this other data repository. And then I want you to write an email to them based on all that customization. Here's some guidelines and rules for what you want to go do there. And the agent will just come up with it and decide, here's the thing that I want to go do. And so it opens up all these use cases that were maybe a little more strict in the past. And that strictness is actually not a feature. Now, there's going to be places where determinism in that old school Zapier way is much more valuable because it creates a lot higher reliability. And then there's going to be other places where you want a more agentic experience because you want creativity. You want the thing to go explore the web, explore these other things, and create something on your behalf. And so the marriage of those two, I think, is going to be a really powerful experience for our customers where they can create automations and agents and they can live together. And it opens up this just like universe of automation that they didn't have before. So that's agents in a nutshell.
Hmm. I'm getting ready to launch a course on AI agents. And the very first lesson is building with Zapier, an AI agent. It's a scheduling assistant agent that has multiple behaviors. And it was so intuitive, the experience of putting it together. I just thought it was a perfect way for people to get started with building an agent and seeing it actually go do work for you that you didn't tell it to do, but well done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the behaviors was when I send you a Slack message, I invite this person to a calendar invite, email them, and the agent filled out the subject line, the body, everything all by itself. Very well done. And when it's just like one of those things that just clicks and it feels like magic.
It really does. And to your point, I think the thing that is pretty surprising is just how easy it is to set these things up. It's one of those things where you start to go, oh, it's just like listing out some bullet points of, hey, I want you to do A, B, C, D, E, almost like if you were giving instruction to an intern. And it's the first time I did it, it was this a little bit jarring experience where you're like, that's it? That's all I have to do? And then it works and you're just like, holy cow, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I will say, I think I'm doing a lot of different platforms. I think Zapier's just works better than others. Like, I think you guys have done a really good job with the quality of just works, just out of the box, which is really nice. But also the way that you can use plain text and then just insert your actions along the way. So it's like a very conversational of, I want you to do this, use this action. I want you to do this, use this action. And then it's able to figure out that sequence and then just do it what it needs to do without more instruction is really great.
Yeah. But I think that's what you get using a platform like Zapier that's got, all the, we have 8,000 different apps on the platform. We've got 10 years of reliability baked into it. And so there's just a level of reliability and trust and all that sort of stuff that's going to work probably much better than most agents out the gate at this point in time.
Let's stay on AI agents. They are all the crave right now with the industry. Everyone's talking about them. Huge hype. What are you guys seeing on your side? Is there a direction that you're going to continue to lean into, or what does this next year or two look like for Zapier?
We're really bullish on AI automation. It is the fastest growing category on Zapier. I think we're probably the largest AI automation, like totally automated AI platform that exists in the world. Most other AI platforms, human has to sit there and interact with them. And so we're just going to keep finding ways to make that experience much better. Right now, what I'm super bullish on is the blend of classic workflows with agents. I think the marriage of the two, you can increase reliability significantly with these things. And you can open up use cases that you wouldn't have been able to do as easily in a pure deterministic workflow world. And I think you can expect us to bring like better intelligence, smarter tools, better agentic experiences into classic Zapier. And it'll feel like it's gone from this sort of static experience to one that's like a lot more alive in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Do you see some people are saying SaaS is going to be in trouble with agents explore? Like, where do you see that conversation going in terms of software in the future? Do you see that companies are just going to be able to make their own software that they need using agents and just their own AI tooling? Or do you still see SaaS players like Salesforce really dominating? Like, where do you see this going?
I think we're going to see an explosion of agents. That's for sure. I am very bullish on that. I do think that a lot of the traditional software as a services players are going to be building their own agents and you're going to interact with those. It's pretty clear to me that these specialized agents provide a huge amount of value. And I don't think that we're going to see one super agent that does every single thing. Like, I think you're actually going to see an explosion of these like micro agents. And those, in some ways, you're probably going to subscribe to them as a service. So these agents are just going to be a category of SaaS at the end of the day. I would say I'm probably long term pretty bullish on agents and SaaS for that matter, though I do think traditional SaaS, the way we think of it, is changing quite a bit. Like the idea of a CRUD app where people log in and input data and export data, that thing feels pretty dead. But the things you do with that data and how you
Mhm.
enable agents to interact with it and do work on your behalf, that feels like there's going to be just way more than of that than probably even us, most of us can even imagine.
Yeah. Right now, AI agents to me feels like a very good assistant in many ways. They could do many scheduling things, personal assistant stuff, social listening stuff. When do you think they might become like more than assistant and like really fulfilling large duties in orgs?
Um, I think it'll happen this year. I think you look at the capabilities of some of these reasoning models. So the O series from OpenAI, the R series from DeepSeek, and some of the flash thinking capabilities that Gemini has. And you can see that there are many tasks where these tools are much more knowledgeable than the average human, much more knowledgeable than even experts. Now, are we going to be able to orchestrate those things to give big ambiguous tasks to them and help them finish? That's where I'm like, I'm not so sure. I still think that there's got to be an orchestration layer where I expect Zapier to play a lot in helping guide these agents and nudge them give them clear directions, break the task down into more discrete steps, help people prompt them better. And so I think we'll see so I think there's like maybe this gap between how smart these things are, which they're incredibly smart now, versus like how widely we're going to be able to deploy them in organizations. And that I think is going to be a lot of what the next year is about, is how do you shrink that?
My last question for you. Traditionally, I think you've been focused on small businesses, but in the last couple of years, or maybe last year, you've really pushed towards enterprise. What are you seeing that's led that push? And what are these enterprises looking for that Zapier could provide?
Yeah. I think that's mostly we've had just huge amount of success in small business. Folks love us for that. We're going to continue investing there, making the product more free, more available, wider set of features for those folks. At the same time, we also saw that just a lot of the largest companies in the world are using Zapier in all sorts of ways. And we felt like we weren't doing a good enough job at serving them. And so the last couple of years, we've really invested a lot in controls and compliance tools and ways to really help those organizations scale automation. And these organizations often have really old school processes, really clunky tools. And so the level of impact that automation, agents, things like that can have in these organizations is pretty massive, because they are just operating at such a large scale and operating oftentimes with dated technology.
One last piece of note. I was recently invited to give a presentation at our local Chamber of Commerce in my city. And so they invited me in and they invited the whole team to learn about AI. And so there's 15, 20 people around a big table and I was at the lead. And I started my presentation. I was like, okay, who knows about Zapier? And no one knew about Zapier. And I was like, so that's what we're going to talk about today, because this is the entry point to learning everything that you need to know to connect everything, create your automations, and use AI.
Mm.
So that was a big thing to me. I was like, how do you guys not know about Zapier yet?
Yeah, I experienced this living in Missouri where, you know, folks like us, we're like hyper online. We're hyper aware of all this crazy technology, this impressive stuff that's happening in automation and AI and then just your average business in your town, they're just not doing stuff with this yet. And so there's going to be this just huge lag factor between these incredible capabilities being available to the world to do insane stuff and them actually being deployed widespread in industry. And I
Yeah.
think that's up to us, up to the whole industry to reach deeper down to helping these people figure out how they can just run their operations way better.
Yeah, I think we're going to see faster adoption than ever before in the coming years with this.
Mhm.
I think AI has finally brought automation and others mainstream to the point where it's like, oh, I want AI. Automation is a great way to do it. No code is a great way. There's a lot of vehicles to get AI that you didn't
Mhm.
know about, but now with awareness for AI, we're ready to go.
Totally.
Awesome. Wade, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you. Any last message to the listeners about how they can get started with Zapier?
It's easy to get started. Just log in, make an agent, make a Zap. You're off to the races.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wade. Have a great day.
Thanks, JJ.
So, super cool to have Wade join us for today. It's really an honor to have CEOs like him come on this podcast, share their thoughts and experiences with you all. It's something that I'm really like, it's a real pleasure for me to have people like this, CEOs like this, trust this podcast to come on to it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a ton. If so, please let us know in the comments. Please share it. It will do a lot by helping us get more guests like Wade on the show. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this show. I think it's another great week. Really excited of the momentum that we have here. Next week, of course, we have another great guest for you. Someone that we haven't talked to yet, a tool that we haven't talked to yet, but the tool is like super, super hot. So I'm excited to get them on to talk to them more about their journey working at that platform and how this platform is currently exploding. So I will see you next week in No Code Plus AI. But otherwise, don't forget to tell your friends about this show, and I will see you then. See you guys.